Left common carotid, internal carotid, external carotid. On the back, these little vessels back here that come off of the subclavians, these are the vertebral arteries. And they're going to collect into this little section in the back called the basilar. So that one more time, yeah, you probably don't have to know that one. These are the vertebral, which go into the basilar artery. Good? Questions so far? Okay. We're going to the, now in the middle, in the chest, we have the mammary artery, which goes down the middle of the chest. And we have these branches that come off called the intercostal arteries. Here's the subclavian artery on the arm. Subclavian goes down underneath the clavicle, comes out, and becomes the axillary artery. Axillary is the armpit. Axillary means armpit. It goes for about right here up until we reach this loop. After this loop, the artery becomes the brachial for arm, which will then split into the radial on the lateral side, ulnar on the medial side arteries that go into the palmar arch. Palmar arch. Good? Questions so far? Subclavian, axillary, brachial, radial, ulnar, palmar arch. Good? Okay. The aorta. Ascending, arch, and then a descending. The descending aorta is split up into a couple of sections, two sections. The first, between the top of the heart and the bottom of the heart, this is called the descending thoracic aorta, chest region, thoracic. Underneath the bottom of the heart, up until we split in the legs, that is called the descending abdominal aorta, abdominal for the abdominal region. Descending abdominal aorta. Descending abdominal aorta, underneath this line up until we split in the legs. Now, on the descending abdominal aorta, we have three trunks that come off of the descending abdominal aorta that go to the organs. The first one, right here, this is called the celiac trunk. It comes straight down and it splits into three vessels. One that goes to the spleen, splenic artery, one that goes to the liver, the hepatic artery, and one that goes around the stomach, called the gastric artery. That one's actually broken on that one and on this one. That gastric artery you can see on this model, right here. And this model, the celiac trunk is smaller, but it's split, it's right, just that space right there, splits into the splenic artery, the hepatic artery, and the gastric, which is the loop right here. See it? One more time. Celiac trunk splits into the splenic, hepatic, and gastric, which is the loop.
Which one does the hepatic connect to?
The one that goes to the liver. Good? Celiac trunk, hepatic, splenic, gastric. First trunk to come off the descending abdominal aorta is the celiac trunk. That splits into the hepatic, splenic, and gastric. The next trunk, underneath it, we have this trunk right here. If you look, it comes off directly, not directly, but underneath the celiac trunk on the descending abdominal aorta. This is called the superior mesenteric artery. Mesenteric means intestinals, right? So this goes to the intestinal area, both small and large intestine. This is the superior mesenteric. And underneath it, on the side here, we have the inferior mesenteric. The superior comes out straight in the front, the inferior comes out to the side, kind of like that, right? So the inferior is over here. Those will loop around. So on the other model, there's like a big loop in the middle. That's what that's looping around to, right? It's looping to the other intestines. Questions with that? Okay. If I were to pick up or lift up, this is why I like to play with this one. We lift up the superior mesenteric artery. We can see these two little wires that come down, really small, thin wires. These two are the gonadal arteries. You can also call them the spermatic or the ovarian artery. They go to the gonads, the testes or the ovaries, right? Those two are the gonadals. And on the posterior, we can see them from the front too, but we can see them more clearly from the posterior. Going out to the kidneys, between that superior and inferior mesenteric, we have the renal arteries. Go out to the kidneys. Good? Now, also on the posterior, we can see these little spikes that come off, little pieces of wire, broken wire that come off of the lower back area. Those are the lumbar arteries. That one you actually can't see on this model for some reason. And the last thing, this one, if you want to video it, you can, but it's kind of hard. You might want to really zoom in or get closer. Inferior phrenic. The inferior phrenic artery is a little vessel that comes above the celiac trunk and goes directly upward. Phrenic means diaphragm, so it goes up to the diaphragm. On this model, It's right here. So the little vessel that comes off right next to the celiac trunk and goes straight up, points to the liver. Watch out. By the way, let me see. Let's see if it's this one. I think it's broken. No, it's right here. Right there. That one that goes up. This should go straight up next to the celiac trunk, straight up to the diaphragm. Usually points right to the liver. This one is broken. See it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll go over it later. This one should still be attached. Yeah, you see how 79 right here. We'll go over this one later. Questions with this? Good so far? Okay. The middle section is the hardest part to learn because everything's like all jumbled up. So it's good that you know it now, and then when we go to this one, you already know where everything is, so we know what we're looking for. Hey, what's up? You still here? Yeah. You need anything? Materials, textbook? All right, see if someone's in the back. I'm not sure if they're. All right. The descending abdominal aorta will come down and split into the right and left common iliacs. Whenever we're talking about the veins or vessels, veins and arteries, you only have to say right and left if we're talking about that split off the aortic arch that we already learned. Everything else you can just say, you don't have to say right or left, you have to specify. So the descending abdominal aorta comes down, splits into two common iliac arteries. Common means a vessel is going to split into an internal and external. Here's the internal iliac, here's our external iliac arteries. Good? One more time. Common iliac, internal iliac, external iliac. External iliac comes down and it will go into the femoral artery, which has a branch on the posterior, the deep femoral artery. Femoral goes down, goes into the popliteal artery. We start seeing these little branches come off in the back of the knee. This is the popliteal artery. That one's not going to be on your list. You're going to learn it because I'm telling you to, because it'll help translate easier when we go to the venous side. How's it going? Popliteal comes down, splits into the tibialis or anterior tibial artery on the front, and on the posterior tibial on the medial side and the fibular on the lateral side. Does that make sense? Kind of hard to tell, especially with models like this that are really messed up. The anterior tibial is always by itself. The posterior tibial and fibular have a little branch between them. And so you can tell where those two are. The more medial one's always going to be the posterior tibial, lateral is fibular. Now, if you do have a kind of messed up one like this, you can't really tell where's lateral and medial, or the loop is broken. What you look at is where these end up. The anterior tibial goes down and goes into this arch. It's always like a circular loop called the dorsalis pedis arch. Dorsalis means top of the foot. The fibular will come down and it will also loop into that dorsalis pedis. The posterior tibial will go underneath the foot, as you can see here, and it will go into the arch in the bottom of the foot called the plantar arch. Plantar arch. Questions with that? Common iliac, external, internal iliac, femoral, deep femoral, femoral popliteal, anterior tibial, posterior tibial, fibular, dorsal pedis arch, plantar arch. Questions with that? Good? Go study.